Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something pretty fundamental, maybe even surprising for some. If you're looking to get into ethical hacking, well, Linux isn't just like a good idea, it's essential. You pretty much have to know it. Some might even say you literally can't learn ethical hacking without Linux. It's that crucial.
That's absolutely right. And today our mission is really to pull back the curtain on why that is. We want to demystify Linux, show you its power, especially in this digital security context. It's foundational.
And we'll be focusing in on one specific flavor, Kali Linux. It's kind of the go-to distribution in this field, right? We'll see why it's so relevant. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. When people hear Linux, maybe they just think, oh, it's like Windows or it's like Mac OS, just another operating system. But that's not quite right, is it? What is Linux, really, at its core?
Yeah, that's a common misconception. Fundamentally, Linux itself isn't actually the whole operating system. Technically, it's the kernel.
The kernel, okay, what does that mean?
Think of the kernel as the absolute core, the engine maybe. It's the piece of software that talks directly to the computer's hardware, manages the processor, the memory, all the low-level stuff. An operating system like Windows or Kali Linux is then built on top of that kernel. It adds the user interface, the utilities, everything else you interact with.
Ah, okay. So when we hear about Kali Linux or maybe Parrot OS or Arch Linux, those aren't just Linux.
Exactly. Those are called distributions or distros. They take the Linux kernel, that core engine, and they bundle it with software, a desktop environment, tools, the whole package.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're full operating systems, but they all share that Linux kernel at their heart. You can pick the distro that, best fits what you need to do.
Got it. Now, moving into the practical side for ethical hacking, you inevitably end up using the terminal, command line.
Yeah.
That black screen with text. It looks pretty scary to newcomers, I think.
It can seem intimidating, for sure.
But here's where it gets really interesting and powerful, right? It's not just scary text.
Not at all. The terminal, or the command line interface CLI, it's just a different way to talk to the computer. Instead of clicking icons in a graphical user interface or GUI, you type commands. And honestly, for many tasks in security, it's way faster and gives you much more precise control.
Okay, so let's touch on some basic commands people might see. Things that mirror what you do normally on a computer, like seeing what files are in a folder.
Yep, that's FLANS. Just type ELS, hit enter, and it lists everything in your current directory.
And knowing where you are, like which folder you're in.
That's PWD, print working directory. It'll show you the full path, maybe something like Home Kali if you're in the default user's home folder.
Right, and moving between folders, like clicking into documents or desktop.
That'd be CD for change directory. So CD desktop moves you to the desktop folder, or CD moves you up one level. Simple navigation.
Okay, basics covered. What about actually doing things like creating stuff, making a new folder?
Easy. MTD make directory. So MTD My Hacking Stuff creates a folder with that name.
And creating or editing files, maybe putting some notes or potentially some code.
You'd often use a text editor like Nano. Just type nanomynotes.txt, and it opens a simple editor right there in the terminal. And yeah, this is where you might write scripts. You often see files start with #binbash.
Shebang.
Exactly, that shebang. It tells the system, hey, use the bash interpreter to run the commands in this file. Useful for writing, maybe small bits of automation, or even in a controlled setting, parts of malware or specific payloads.
And if you just want to quickly see what's inside a file without opening the editor.
CAT stands for concatenate, but mostly used to just display file contents. catmynotes.txt shows you the text.
Okay, so these commands, L, CD, mkdir, nanocat, they seem basic.
They are basic, but they're the absolute foundation. You combine these, you script them, and suddenly you can do really complex things very quickly, way faster than clicking around.
Right, the building blocks. Now, let's connect this back to Kali Linux specifically. You said distributions bundle software. What makes Kali special isn't just that it uses the Linux kernel and has a terminal, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Kali's real power comes from its massive collection of pre-installed hacking tools, hundreds of them. Tools for reconnaissance, scanning, exploitation, password cracking, web analysis. It's all there. You install Kali and boom, you have this huge security toolkit ready to go. No need to hunt down and install everything individually.
And these are some well-known tools in the security world, I imagine.
Definitely. You've got things like Burp Suite, which is huge for web application testing. Finding vulnerabilities in websites, there's tools like DURB or GoBuster for enumeration, basically finding hidden files and directories on web servers, and Nmap, of course. Probably the most famous network scanner out there, essential for mapping networks and finding open ports.
You also mentioned password cracking.
Yeah, tools like John the Ripper, or just John, or Hashcat. These take password hashes, those scrambled, obfuscated versions of passwords that systems store, and they try to crack them to find the original password.
And crucially, most of these powerful tools,
Hmm.
you run them from the command line we were just talking about.
That's the key. Nmap, John, Metasploit, many of the heavy hitters are command line driven. It allows for scripting, piping output from one tool into another. It really ties everything together.
Okay, so we have the OS, the command line, the built-in tools, go a level deeper, exploits and frameworks. What does this actually look like in practice when you're trying to, test a vulnerability?
Right. So once you've identified a potential weakness, maybe using Nmap or Burp Suite,
Uh-huh.
you might look for a specific exploit. There are databases like the aptly named exploit database that
Yeah.
catalog known vulnerabilities and the code to take advantage of them.
Can you give an example?
Sure, you might find an entry like, let's say, Microsoft Windows brokering file system elevation of privilege vulnerability affecting Windows 11 version 22H2.
Yeah.
It would likely have a CVE number,
The VE.
common vulnerabilities and exposures. It's like a unique ID number for a specific publicly known security flaw. Maybe it's a CVE 2025 something something.
Okay. And what would that exploit description tell you?
It might explain that this specific vulnerability allows someone who already has some access to a system to gain higher privileges. Like it might say it leverages a scheduled task to run commands as the system user, which is the highest level of privilege on Windows. It might note if it allows remote code execution, meaning you could potentially run commands from afar, though sometimes it might require, say, administrator privileges to trigger initially.
That sounds potent
Yeah.
and complex to manage all these individual exploits.
It can be. Which brings us to frameworks like Metasploit.
Ah, Metasploit. I've heard that name. It's like a collection of these exploits.
Exactly. But it's more than just a collection. It's a whole framework for developing, testing, and using exploits. The numbers are pretty wild. Last I checked, it had something like over 2,500 exploits built in.
Wow.
And over 1,600 payloads. That's the code that actually runs on the target machine after the exploit works. Plus encoders to help evade detection, evasion techniques. It's huge.
So Metasploit makes it easier to actually use these cataloged exploits.
Precisely. It standardizes the process. You choose your target, you choose the exploit you think will work, you configure a payload, and you launch it. It handles a lot of the tricky background stuff, letting the ethical hacker focus on the strategy and the impact, rather than getting bogged down in the weeds of each individual export's code. It speeds things up massively.
Okay, this is clearly very powerful stuff.
Right.
Which brings us to a really important point we need to hammer home. Ethics. Legality.
Mm.
Everything we've discussed, the command line, coloredly, Nmap, Metasploit, exploit,
Yes.
it's all for educational purposes, right? For use in controlled environments.
Absolutely. 100%. We cannot stress this enough. This knowledge, these tools, they are powerful. And using them against systems or networks you do not have explicit written permission to test is illegal, period. The consequences can be incredibly severe fines, jail time, career ruined. Everything we talk about here is under the assumption of ethical hacking, penetration testing within a lab, or on systems where you have full authorization. Always stay legal.
Crucial reminder.
Mm.
Okay, so as we wrap up, it feels like we've covered a lot, but also just scratched the surface.
Oh, definitely. Linux is incredibly deep. It's so customizable.
From the kernel upwards, like you said.
Yeah. You can tweak almost anything. There's an insane amount to learn, way beyond just these security tools.
So we've really only given people the tip of the iceberg today.
For sure, but hopefully a useful tip.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with.
Okay. How about this? Now that you have a glimpse into these underlying tools like Linux, the command line, frameworks like Metasploit, how does knowing this exists change how you think about your own digital security? Does it make you think differently about the software you use every day? Knowing these layers exist underneath and knowing that people are constantly probing them, both ethically and unethically, it just makes you realize there's so much happening beneath the surface of the technology we rely on. Something to ponder, perhaps?